You're listening to the Free to Be Mindful podcast, which provides bite-sized tips for busy parents, educators, and anyone working with kids. These real talk conversations focus on mindful living, mental health, and personal growth, helping all to learn, grow, and inspire with mindfulness in mind. I'm your host, Vanessa de Jesus Guzman, educator, licensed professional counselor, entrepreneur, and mom. I'm passionate about helping folks live life with peace of mind and ease of heart while not losing their, well, you know, here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 149 of the Free to Be Mindful podcast. I hope that you're feeling good, looking good, and doing better in this world than you were yesterday. My friends, I am so excited for this week because we are celebrating something very special. And in the past, it's something that I really would have overlooked or just taken a picture and called it a day and not given too much importance to this. However, with time and with experience, with age, and hopefully with wisdom, learning to celebrate the small things and be really intentional with my celebrations because it is the small things, it is in all the small things that really amount to the big things. So, what is it that I'm celebrating? Well, this week I am celebrating Free to Be Mindful's fourth birthday. And sure, it's just 4 years of having a business, but it's pretty special. And I'm really excited to share the celebration with you. And what I wanted to do is really share how this came to be, because it wasn't easy, my friends. And it took a really, really long time, much longer than I ever expected it would take. And it starts from really early days of when I knew what I wanted to do and then the road that I took to get where I am now. So I know that I have a wide range of listeners, from college students to moms to educators and everyone in between. And regardless of where you are in your journey called life, I think that the story of me getting to where I am now, knowing that there is still so much more to go, I think it may resonate with you in all different aspects because of the windy roads that my journey has been on to get to this point. So I invite you to get comfortable. And I, first and foremost, just thank you for allowing me to share this space with you, to share my story with you. And thank you for listening in. So here we go. How I got here starts with going way, way back to even when I was in kindergarten, just always knowing that I wanted to be a teacher. It's something that I always felt in my heart, and I knew that I was really put on this earth to work with children. But I remember the summer before going into college, my dad said that teachers don't make a lot of money, and he was right, but I didn't know that. So I did go into college as a psych major. And the spring semester of my sophomore year, at the end of the spring semester of my sophomore year, I knew that I didn't want to be doing just psychology by itself. So after doing 2 full years with one major, I added elementary education as a double major. And it really spoke to me. I knew in my heart of hearts that that's what I wanted to do. So I worked my butt off to graduate still in 4 years, despite having a double major. And I became a second grade teacher, and I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it. The school where I worked was amazing. I had amazing colleagues, and it was awesome to just touch children's lives in that way. And my second year teaching, I had to unfortunately physically restrain a child from harming himself or other classmates. And it was that year that I applied for a school counseling master's program because I just thought to myself, this isn't what I wanted to be doing forever. And I saw the need that this child was in. And at that point, he didn't need reading and writing and math and social studies and so on. He needed more. He needed a therapist, to be honest with you. So I enrolled in a school counseling program, and I would teach by day and go to school at night. And after 4 years of living on my own in central Jersey while I attended the College of New Jersey to get my master's, which is also where I got my undergrad, I missed my family. And if I'm being honest, I miss having a Spanish radio station and Spanish food at my fingertips because it wasn't as accessible as it is in North Jersey. So when it came time to complete my school counseling internship, I chose to do it full time, which meant that I resigned from my teaching position, which was a really hard move to make. I resigned from the teaching position that I loved. I moved back with my parents, which was also a really hard move to make. And a year later, I graduated with my master's in school counseling. And I believe that it was because of my teaching experience. I was a really good teacher. And also being bilingual in my experience and, where I went to school and whatnot, I was able to land a school counseling job a week after graduation, starting in the month of May of that year. So after 2 years of being a school counselor, I then decided to start the process of becoming a licensed therapist. And it's something that really interested me because it just seemed like a no brainer of working as a school counselor until 3 o'clock and then seeing one or two clients after school and getting to work with children in a very different way or with families in a very different way. So I began taking the necessary classes in the summer of 2011, and I needed to take four additional classes on top of my 48 credit master's in order to begin the process. So I began taking those classes, and because of wrong advice given not by one, but by two New Jersey universities and various supervisors, instead of the typical 4 or so years that it would have taken me to take the four classes that I needed to take, those I took in 1 year. That wasn't an issue. But the 3 year of 4,500 supervised hours mandated in the state of New Jersey in order to be a licensed professional counselor, instead of 4 years, it took 9 years. And of course, experience counts for a lot, right? And that can't be replicated. But it was a hands down frustrating experience because while I was working full time as a school counselor by day, I was an in home clinician by night. And in addition to going into people's homes and working with their children, I also used to run a social skills group for the same agency that I worked for. And that was a lot as I used to leave my house at 7 o'clock in the morning or so and not get home typically until 7 or 8 o'clock at night from working back to back both jobs. And I remember in November of 2018, while speaking to one of the moms of one of my in home clients, the mom was super duper overwhelmed. She had a handful of children. And despite being there for one of her kids, she seemed to have been going through a lot that day because she just lost it when I got there. She was hyperventilating, crying, and asking the rhetorical question of how was she supposed to handle it all? And it was in that home in November of 2018 that I decided to do something about it. Because there seems to always be endless support for kids, as there should be. But I thought to myself, if no one is helping these moms, who more often than not are the backbones to these families, what good was I even doing? So, in a matter of 2 weeks, I came up with the name, the concept, the mission, and the vision to Amiga Moms, which is a platform helping 21st century moms through a supportive network and educational events to become more patient and mindful moms. And on May 4th, 2019, I held an amazing Amiga Moms conference, which was sold out. It was filled with delicious meals, mimosas, an amazing swag bag, tears, and a lot of laughter. And 20 days later, on May 24th, I had an appointment with my accountant who filled out the paperwork for my business known as Free to Be Mindful. And from May 2019 to into the pandemic, Amiga Moms had an in person event every single month. So, my overall business is Free to Be Mindful, and Amiga Moms is a subset of Free to Be Mindful. And in my mind, what I was doing was setting everything up as I was expecting to get my full licensure by September of that year. So I knew that this is something that I wanted to do, not only to work with children as a licensed therapist, but also to work with moms, not only in a therapeutic setting, but to continue the work of Amiga Moms as well. So in August 2021, I just started browsing the internet to see what was available in my area as far as office spaces. And the first place I found was at a great location for a great price, which is the office where you see me recording this now if you're watching. And on September 11th, 2019, I signed the lease to my office. And 8 short days later, I held my first Mindfulness for Kids classes. So, in the state of New Jersey, as a licensed associate counselor, which is the licensure before LPC, as a counselor, licensed professional counselor, you can't practice on your own. So, because of that, I decided that I would hold mindfulness classes for kids until my licensure came in a couple of weeks later. Or so I thought. Because at the end of September, I began to prepare my paperwork to send to the state's licensing board. And my supervisor at the time went back on her word of counting group counseling hours that I had completed at that same agency when I first started with them 3 years prior to getting this paperwork prepped and sending it to the state. So she stated she would not count them because she wasn't my supervisor at that time, despite overlooking one of the programs that I did work at and despite it all being at the very same agency. But either way, that delayed the filing for everything that I needed because, again, in the state of New Jersey, your supervisor has to be approved before you even start counting the hours. But at that point, I thought, well, let me just send all the information in with all of my hours so that the state could see, that this was legit, and then they would give me my licensure. Well, the state of New Jersey is very serious when it comes to red tape, and the weeks went by in October and in November. And mind you, my friends, that this is all while I'm paying for my office space that I was only using a handful of times, like 1 to 3 times a week for these mindfulness classes for kids. So, after what felt like harassing the state licensing board for a number of weeks, I finally received a call from the executive director who told me that first of all, I never needed that internship that the two universities and multiple supervisors said that I needed between the years of 2011 and 2017. Can you believe that? She also stated that because my group supervisor wasn't approved by the state prior to me earning those hours, that none of those hours would count and that I had 8 more months of hours left to do. And my friends, I was livid, mad at the two state universities who said I needed an internship, which took $3,000 to pay for a class, and that time spending going to the class and completing assignments only to know that I never needed to do that to begin with. And you may ask yourself, why was I ill advised by two universities? I really think it's because, well, one, it's a business. And two, this is really where I think I lay more weight on, is because there aren't many school counselors, at least at that time, that would become licensed therapists. So it was really just lack of knowledge. And I trusted their word. So I was mad at them. I was irritated from working at the agency at first for only $20 an hour, despite having a bachelor's and a 48 credit master's and 15 credits past that master's for the advanced counseling certification. And I did that just to get my foot in the door to eventually be supervised there. I was furious with the agency and with my supervisor, who told me that she would count those group counseling hours only to change her mind 3 years later. I was furious for working what seemed to be two full-time jobs and for missing time with my family and from my son in his first few years of life during this time. And I was so angry with myself because I was so busy during this time that I had gained 80 pounds due to the stress and overwhelm of working so much. I could honestly say from 2015 to 2020, I was just mad at the world. And then at my school counseling job, I was slowly outgrowing it. I loved working with the students and I did my job well, but I felt silenced. I went from having the space and approval to do a ton to being overlooked for a lot. And with having less responsibilities on my plate, I just began to put more and more time and energy into my business, just dreaming of what it would be. So months went by, right? We're now into 2020. And then on Friday the 13th in March of 2020, we were all sent home. And the pandemic was a lot for everyone. And while, yes, it was hard not being able to see my family and it was an adjustment to do my job from home, it was actually good in a lot of ways. I got to spend more time with my son than I ever had before. He was in first grade at the time, and it was just awesome to see him experience school. As before that, I think I got to take him to school twice ever before that. I never went on a field trip with him, and I never really got to experience school through his eyes. But because of the lockdown, I also didn't have to go to anyone's house. I saved a ton of money, paid off credit cards, got a Peloton, and finally had the time to work out since I didn't have to work two jobs to the same capacity that I was working before. I pivoted my in person mindfulness classes for kids to a virtual offering. And by May 2020, I had secured a 2-year sponsorship with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shields of New Jersey to continue offering those classes virtually. I did a ton of virtual programs. I offered a lot of free value on my social media platforms and on my website and on the platform of others. And in June 2020, I got my paperwork together once again. I submitted it to the state straight away. And in August 2020, it was just simply amazing. I had the phenomenal opportunity to appear virtually on the Today Show talking to Jenna Bush. Hoda was on vacation because it was her birthday that week. So it was just Jenna. And my friends, just 24 hours later, after being on the Today Show, after spending 60 days calling the state, they finally picked up. They said they were obviously backed up because of the pandemic, but they were able to give me my license number over the phone. And I was finally, after all of those years, after all of that efforts, I was finally a fully licensed professional counselor. And only 6 days after that, I had my first client. Now, mind you, it was the summertime, so I wasn't going to my school counseling job. And although I did have some summer hours here and there, in between, I was taking private practice clients virtually, and I still had in home clients through the agency I still worked for. So when September 2020 came around for that 2021 school year, we were still virtual. So I was able to work from home, again, enjoy now my kids' virtual second grade experience, and I was able to see my own clients. In December of that year, I started doing this, the Free to Be Mindful podcast, and I named it after my practice because mindfulness is my jam after all. And everything was going great. I had finally gotten my licensure. I had slowly started seeing some in person clients with insane safety precautions because of the pandemic. And at that point, I still had in home clients for the agency. So really, even though everything was going well, I went from having two jobs to three. Funny, right? But it was different because with the pandemic precautions in place, I still had time on my hands. I was enjoying spending time with my son and my family. I had spent so much time on the Peloton that I lost 50 pounds in that first year of the pandemic. I was finally doing what I had my heart set on since 2009 when I graduated with my school counseling degree. And what was that I was able to have my own private practice and see clients on my own terms. I was feeling better physically, mentally, emotionally. Everything was awesome. Eventually, I did stop working for the agency and I slowly began taking more and more clients. That summer of 2021, I was living the dream because now not going to school and having been in private practice for a full year by then, I was able to take on many more clients since I now had the daytime availability after school was out, and I was just thrilled. I was also still continuing to host Amiga Moms events, and everything was just really, really good. So you can imagine how different life felt going back to school in September of 2021, with an average of about 8 to 10 private practice clients a week, and while functioning at complete back to normal at school. I would feel stifled going to school in the morning as a school counselor, but excited to go to my office in the afternoon. And I would see clients from 4 to 6 o'clock, sometimes until 7 o'clock, but I found myself missing out on my family once again. And at that point, I had many, when I say many, many heart to hearts with myself. I had finally gotten to the place where I wanted to be after working so hard with an office space and all. And in May 2019, when I founded Free to Be Mindful, I knew that I wanted a private practice where I could see clients after school, but somehow that turned into something much more. And being in the worlds of education from when I was 21 years old, that's how old I was when I started teaching, it was really hard to leave a career after 18 years with a pension, with great insurance, with all of these benefits and having a job that I didn't even have to think about too hard because I did it well without question. And I went from all of that to owning my own practice, to being my own boss, to seeking out my own peer supervision, to seeking out my own therapist to help me with a transition, to hiring help, to knowing that there's inconsistencies in terms of cancellations, and to knowing that if I'm not working, I'm not getting paid. So it was a really, really hard decision to make. But I remember mid October of 2021, I had a conversation with my supervisor one week, with my principal the other week, and just 2 weeks after that, at the beginning of November, I had told my colleagues that I was giving in my 60-day notice and I would no longer be working there as of January 1st, 2022. And that was when I started private practice full time. So, what a story, right? It took so long to get here. And I know that this is not the ending point. This is really the starting point still because there's so many wonderful things yet to come. Over the past 4 years, we've had some incredible milestones and we've done a lot of things. And we continue, when I say we, I mean Free to Be Mindful, still continues to learn along the way and to constantly grow and learn and grow and evolve with everything that's happening. So we used to do in-person mindfulness classes for kids and then virtual mindfulness classes for kids, and we've sunset that program. I also used to have the Consult to Counselor series on this podcast, and maybe one day it'll come back. But for now, I've sunset that program as well. Right now, I still continue to hold Amiga Moms virtual and in-person events, along with a conference that we had back in 2019. I have bought on Vanessa, well, now we call ourselves Vanessa Squared, where we run the platform together. And there's so many exciting things to come when it comes to that. We continue to hold Free to Be Mindful therapy services, focusing on mental health for children, young adults in college, and for mothers. I do a lot of speaking when it comes to providing in services to educators and support staffs. I've done assemblies for students and many, many, many personal development programs for parents and parent teacher organizations. We have this, the Free to Be Mindful podcast, which offers bite sized tips focused on mindful living, mental health, and personal growth. And my puppy, my pandemic puppy, Ollie, was finally certified as a therapy dog. And we have now been on visits to different schools to offer therapy dog services. And then what's next? We have big plans for the future, including new product launches and expansions of sorts, and just continued growth. And some of this growth includes Amiga Mom retreats, yes, in this year of 2023, more guests on this podcast, much more speaking engagements. I do have 2 books that I've been working on, which I really want to publish them soon, a parenting course, and so, so much more. And my friends, it sounds like rainbows and butterflies of just being here, but know that it's a lot of work. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but opening a business, owning a business and having it be successful, there's so much work that goes into that that is easily overlooked. And I remember coming across this book in the process that when I read it, it sounds corny, but when I read it, it really brought tears to my eyes because it spoke to me as I was making this transition out of public schools and into private practice. And I'm just going to read a page or two so that you see how it spoke to me. The book is called Don't Be Afraid to Drop, and it's about two raindrops living up in the cloud, a parent and a child, and the child being really afraid to drop to the floor because, they didn't know where they were going to end up. And the child raindrop says, I will miss what I have on this cloud I call home, and I'm a little afraid to let go. I'm nervous and scared, and my tummy has knots. There's so much out there that I don't know. And the parent says, don't be afraid to drop to the ground. Be brave and trust what I say. If you don't take a risk, you'll never find out what great things might happen today. I closed my eyes, I took a deep breath, and let go of my beautiful cloud. It felt kind of weird to fall through the air, but on the inside, I was proud. I'd taken a chance. I started to grow. My purpose in life would be met. When I landed, I splattered, but it didn't matter. I'd helped a dry carrot get wet. And it goes on from there. But it really resonated because I felt kind of weird doing this, and I was nervous and I was scared. And I want to use my story and use this message to really inspire you to go for what is scary and what you are nervous about. And is it hard? Absolutely. It's hard because, again, you don't know what you don't know. So there's a lot of homework and investigation and things to find out and things to do. But know that you are worth it to take the risk on yourself. You are worth it to bet on yourself to just see what might happen if you try that thing. And maybe that thing for you isn't opening up your own business or isn't leaving a career. Or it might be just a career change, or maybe just a job change, but maybe it is starting a family, doing something new, going skydiving, starting your life again after a breakup or a divorce. It could be so many things that are really hard, but my friends, again, you are worth it. And when I started Free to Be Mindful, I had a vision, right? An idea for what I wanted to achieve. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And there's always so many challenges. And there were many, many moments of doubt. But I never lost sight of the mission that I set up for Free to Be Mindful and for Amiga Moms. And I really want to create a space that makes a difference in people's lives. I love having this space of sharing about mindfulness and really educating that it's not just about meditation and floating away on a cloud, as I always say, but really about mindful living and weaving the concepts of mindfulness in everyday life, about the importance of mental health and reducing that stigma, as we talked about in our podcast episode last week, and about personal growth and emphasizing my motto of learn, grow, and inspire, that we're always learning as humans and that we hopefully grow from what we learn and use that growth to inspire others in the work that we do. And it is that I want to continue doing with Free to Be Mindful as we look forward to the future for everything that is to come. So at this time, I would like to just again thank you. Thank you for listening in and allowing me the space to share my story and to share episode after episode, all focused again on mindful living, mental health, and personal growth. Thank you for trusting me with all the information I share, not only on the podcast, but on social media and via my weekly newsletters. Thank you for this listeners and the followers for just supporting Free to Be Mindful on this journey. Your encouragement, your feedback, your loyalty really does mean a ton. I like to thank the Free to Be Mindful and Amiga Moms team for their hard work and their dedication. I really appreciate their time and their belief in Free to Be Mindful as well. I'd also like to thank my family, who I am always in endless gratitude of for helping me so much when I am working in the business and taking care of things at home and with my son, but also for really being the cheerleaders on the sidelines and for their support of believing in this big transition that I made. And they still keep going 4 years later. And again, I'd like to thank you and for your support, for your listens, for your follows, for your rates, for your reviews, for trusting me in working with your children here in the therapeutic space, and trusting me in working with you as moms in the Amiga Moms virtual and in person spaces, and for knowing that there's so much more to come. Thank you once again for listening. Please visit me on social media at Counselor V de Jesus, whatever sandbox that you like to play in. I would love to hear from you what you thought of this episode and any happy birthday wishes that you'd like to give. I'll take them all on there or via my newsletter or my website. And cheers for many, many more years of all of the wonderful things that are to come. And as always, remember in a world where you are free to be anything that you want to be, you are always free to be mindful.